When you first hear that there is a new horror movie titled Pollen, you would presume it relates to 2023's absolutely horrendous hay fever season.
Oof.
No, your presumptions would be wrong, and my jokes would still be shite. While the film does feature two very memorable scenes of sneezing,
No.
Pollen actually revolves around a much darker subject matter. Ava Rose Kinnard stars as our protagonist Hera, a friendly, innocent young lady who has recently landed her dream job. But because she is a normal human being, she sticks out in the office like a sore thumb. This is a high-stakes, high-energy corporate environment where your colleagues are jealous, conspiring, gossipy bitches, and your superiors are vicious, vile bullies. When you start here, you trade in your humanity at the door, and in return, receive cold-ass morals and plentiful bathroom cocaine. The wide-eyed Hera is still desperate to fit in and craft a career for herself, despite obviously not sharing her co-workers' shark-like methods. This naive ambition allows her to get all giddy at the knees when one of the higher-ups, Zack, takes a sudden, strong romantic interest in her. Well, she thinks it's about romance, whereas we can take one look at Zack's smug face and know he's here for one thing, and one thing only. After a date, Pretty Boy drops Hera off at home, giving her a nice little flowery gift, and she tries to say goodnight. Just as we suspected, he manipulates his way in and assaults her. I won't go into the rest of the plot details, other than saying that everyone around her continues to poke holes in her, while her sanity crumbles apart, and she begins to experience encounters with a tree man. It's fair to say that the tone of Pollen is very grim and rather dry, given the serious subject matter, and the fact that it opens with a pretty pollinated hanging. If you're just looking for a horror film with a spooky floral monster, you're gonna be disappointed. This is the first feature film from writer-director D.W. Medoff. D.W. The directing and style in general is very subdued, and lacks any sort of flash or flourish. Ooh, don't get me wrong, it is shot well, just very matter-of-factly, allowing horrible scene after horrible scene to hammer its point home without any cinematic distraction. Likewise, the script is simple and seems to have one goal in mind. It wants to piss you right the fuck off. Every single character exists only to belittle, humiliate, gaslight, or straight up degrade our poor lead. It is so relentless that it almost stumbles over the line into caricature quite a few times.
Do you have a learning disability?
And just when you're thinking it's only her workplace that is more toxic than that arsehole from RoboCop, nope. Her sister comes around for dinner, yay, and immediately starts judging and berating Hera too. For fuck's sake, no respite for the wicked. Or for normal people either, it seems. Pollen is a humourless film, with the only laughs being born from exasperation at how cruel everyone is. But if the purpose of the movie was indeed to infuriate you, then mission accomplished, DW. I'm livid. Taking all that into account, much of the heavy lifting then falls onto our lead actress Ava, seen here imitating Taylor Swift's early country days. Her filmography shows she is relatively inexperienced, so I'm rather impressed with her performance. Her strengths lie within the first half of the film, accurately portraying a woman trapped in a series of very abusive relationships, the confusion, the false guilt, the stress of it all. When the script demands more from her, namely in her breakdown towards madness and plant obsession phase, the performance cracks a little, but it is a tough role in fairness. What about the horror? Well, there's a nice amount of vegan body horror, sneezing out plant gunk, vomiting petals, and the tree man is a nifty design. Anyone who has watched my lengthy foray into the Children of the Corn remakes will know I have an affinity for leafy, planty tree monsters. Here's to you, Cornwallis. Naturally, I wanted more of this beast, but it very much plays as a visual metaphor for Zack and his crimes, more than an evil monster that needs to be defeated, sort of thing. In that sense, it is used sparingly, but that's for the best. There is also some very satisfying scenes of violence in the back end of the film. While it does not match the intensity of a slasher film, for example, it carries a cathartic weight that a lot of horrors lack. But yeah, in terms of horror, there's not too much.
Good morning.
Pollen is all about the pressures and judgments applied to women, both in terms of career and their home lives. Hera's colleagues consistently imply their business is a man's world, while her family scoff at her because she hasn't got a husband yet, let alone a child. Now, there is a certain demographic that will hate the themes and the point of this film. Before I decided if I wanted to watch Pollen, I checked out the IMDb page, and was unfortunate enough to come face to face with the following featured review.
Terrible film by a bunch of terrible characters. The girl initiates the plot when she lets her co-worker inside the home. Period. Emphasis on lets him inside. I thought that later it would be revealed that the actions from the first act were actually different than she experienced. That I would learn that the male co-worker actually forced himself inside and caused her physical harm. But that's not the case. Period. She actually let him in the house, and let him up the stairs, and let him in her bedroom, to let him have sex with her. That is not a victim. That is a woman who has the inability to set boundaries. She could have just walked away from her front porch, left him there by himself, and went to the authorities if she really did not want to have sex with him. She really liked him, and beyond her own doubt, proceeded to let him take advantage of the opportunity. Is it possible for a woman to be taken advantage of physically? Yes. Is it possible for a woman to be taken advantage of orally with words? No. He did not manipulate her.
This fucker goes on and on, but if he really wants to dissect the inciting incident, let's go back and take a look, shall we? For starters, Zach is a direct superior at her workplace. That's already a troubling power imbalance before he hints at their relationship leading to career advancement. Bribery, in other words. And let's mark his behaviour at the end of the date.
Can I come in?
No?
She rejects his request to come inside, and he instantly uses the fact that he bought her a gift as blackmail.
You like the gift, right?
She says she can buy her own plants, so he belittles her by bragging about how much he earned right out of college, knowing full fucking well she's not earning nearly as much.
I make way less than that.
Hera, I'm not trying to brag.
Oh yes you are, you smug shit. He manipulates her, alternating between sweet-sounding compliments and put-downs.
You are so pretty. Well, you're making me look like a fucking loser out here.
Outright stating she will only progress in her career with his help.
There's a glass ceiling. And without help, it'll crush you. You could have everything.
And the only way to receive that help? I wonder. She continues to reject his advances, but Zach is so insistent to be invited inside, I almost believed this was about to turn into a fucking vampire flick. He aggressively pursues, entering her physical boundaries as she repeatedly and panickingly recoils. Is that the face of someone who wants this to happen? Again, he emotionally toils with her.
I was taking your lead on things. I thought you liked me. If you didn't want this to happen, why'd you let me ask you out again? I mean, I live like 40 fucking minutes away.
Just look at him. The only way he could be more of a predator is if he had mandibles and a fucking laser rifle on his shoulder. She doesn't let him in. He initiates a forceful, uncomfortable kiss and lets himself in. Very specifically, he lets himself in. She doesn't react out of fear for her safety and presumably also her job. What follows is the sound of a horrible rough pounding. Not exactly a passionate love affair. The guy on IMDb also conveniently ignored the fact that Zach reveals he removed the condom without Hera's knowledge or consent. So, yeah, come on. If twats like this punk keep whining about, why do they keep making media about women's troubles and toxic men, maybe reread your own fucking review, and you'll see why films like Pollen will continue to be produced for the rest of fucking time. I'm glad I saw his review before I watched the film, because it provided a much needed reminder of the real life context. Well, after all that ranting, let's go back to the film itself. Pollen is not an easy watch. As I said before, it's infuriating by design, and often slow-paced. but it is a solid 3-star watch. That said, I can't imagine ever having the desire to rewatch.